Welcome to Movie Recall. In today's video, we'll be going through the 1983 thriller film Scarface. It's time to recall, let's get started, turn on subtitles, and spoilers ahead. The movie starts and we see that the harbor of Mariel is open and people on boats travel to the US to get together with their relatives. A refugee named Tony fled to the US and he is being interrogated by the patrols. Tony lies to the police about having no relatives in the US, and then an officer notices his tattoo and asks about it. Tony tells him that it is his sweetheart, to which an officer says, "Sweetheart my ass." One of the officers tells that guys in prison have tattoos like that and they are killers. The tattoos signify that they are killers. Tony tells them that he has been in prison once when he was caught buying dollars, and the officer sends him to a refugee camp. Tony tells the boss that he is a political prisoner, and the boss is still not moved, and he is then escorted out. When he is on the bus, he talks to his friends, and Chi-Chi tells him that he told the interrogators that he was in sanitation. Tony gets annoyed because Chi-Chi was told by him to say sanitarium, not sanitation. While they are at the camp, Chi-Chi comes to Tony and tells him that they are going to be out of there in 30 days, and they are going to have a green card and a job as well. A man named Rabanga has come to the prison and he has tortured some prisoners to death. One of the prisoners' brother is a rich man and he wants Rabanga dead. And if Tony and Chi-Chi are able to finish the job, they can be out of the camp. Well, they end up killing the man. Now they're out, but Tony is annoyed as he tells Chi-Chi that he did not come there to wash dishes at a cafe and that Chico's friend should come up with something better for them. As they wind up their work, they are informed that two guys are looking for them. Both come out to see the guys, and it turns out to be one of Chi-Chi's acquaintances named Omar. Omar offers them work, saying they have to unload a boat with 25 tons of pot. Tony does not seem happy about the wage they offered. Omar then tells him to go and continue washing dishes. They get into an argument and Omar comes up with another offer. They have to get Yipo back and they will receive $5 grand each. Omar tells them that they are going to need more people in order to pull off this job, and if they are caught, God help them. Omar leaves and Tony tells Chi-Chi that he should learn to stand up to other people and not just take whatever they offer. As four people go to purchase cocaine from Colombian dealers, the deal goes badly. However, when Tony and Angel get captured, Tony is forced to watch as Angel gets killed when the dealers dismember him with a chainsaw, shortly before Manny and Chi-Chi manage to rescue Tony. They then kill the Colombians. Later on, Tony calls Omar and tells him that things got out of control and they kind of messed up a little, but they have Yiyo and the money with them. However, suspecting that Omar set them up, Tony and Manny insist on personally delivering the recovered drugs and money to Frank. The three go to the Lopez house. They meet the boss named Frank. He is delighted to learn that Tony had fun shooting Hector dead. Frank tells them to make themselves comfortable, and Tony is unable to take his eyes off of Lopez's lady. The girl's name is Elvira, and she seems to have an attitude as she tells Frank that she does not feel like going to the restaurant. They then go to a bar while Chi-Chi is having the time of his life dancing. Frank gives Tony a piece of advice, telling him to never underestimate the other guy's grief. Elvira then tells Tony not to get high on his own supplies while she, ironically, goes on to do the same. Tony enjoys the new company. He feels fancy as he has a new cigar in one hand and a glass of expensive champagne in the other. After that, Tony and Elvira go to the dance floor, and Tony tells Elvira that it seems like she has not been fucked in years, and Elvira says that it is none of his business. They go back and forth, and the next thing we see, Chi-Chi and Tony are in their car on their way back. Tony tells Chi-Chi that Elvira likes him, but Chi-Chi is scared for him and goes on to express that he is happy with what he already has. The next day, they're at the beach, and Tony expressed that he would have been a rich guy if he had come there 10 years ago. Tony seems to be having the best time of his life, but he gets rejected by a lady after he offers to buy her an ice cream. Chi-Chi then claims that he is going to show Tony how it's done, but ends up getting slapped in the face. After being shot down by the woman, both of them decide they have to make money and become powerful, and then they are going to get the women in this city. They then go to pick up Elvira, and she is surprised to see their car. They go to a showroom and Elvira picks out a car for them. After that, Elvira and Tony get in the car, and Tony tries to kiss Elvira, but she resists and then gives him a smile. In the next scene, we see Tony arriving at a house. A woman opens the door. It turns out that it is his mother, and he smiles as he sees his sister Gina. When they are sitting having a chat, Gina expresses that she is doing a job at college and she is going to be making good money in 2 years. Tony, however, goes on to tell them both that they do not have to work at all. Tony hands a nice amount of money to his mother, and she becomes skeptical, asking him who he killed this time to earn this money. Tony tells his mother that he works in an anti-Castro group. His mother, however, does not buy it, throws his money back at him, and asks him to leave. As Tony is about to leave, Gina approaches him and tells him that she does not care about where the money came from. Tony gives her the money and asks her to take good care of herself. Gina also expresses that she loves her brother. As Tony gets back in his car, Chi-Chi compliments Gina and Tony warns him to stay away from her. Frank sends Tony and Omar to Cochabamba, Bolivia to meet with cocaine kingpin Alejandro Sosa. As they talk business, the conversation gets heated as Tony suggests better ways of doing business to the big tycoons. He then goes on to finalize the deal without Frank's permission, and Omar does not like it and points out to Tony that he has no such authority to finalize the deal until Frank has permitted it, and Mr. Sosa appreciates it. Sosa later claims to Tony that Omar is a police informant and that Frank has poor judgment. Tony witnesses a beaten Omar hanged from a helicopter. Tony, unbothered by Omar's execution as he blames him for Angel's death, vouches for Frank's organization. Sosa, taking a liking to Tony, agrees to the deal in turn, but not before warning Tony to never betray him. Tony tells him that he has his balls and his words, which he will not break for anyone. Frank is pissed at Tony for making a deal with Sosa for $18 million, and Tony tries to tell him that they can make $75 million out of the deal. Frank is infuriated by Omar's demise and the unauthorized deal struck by Tony. Frank reminds him that he is still the boss and goes on to ask him to recall what he said to him at the bar the night they met. He told Tony that the guys who last in this business are the guys who fly low-key, and the guys who just want champagne and flesh do not last that long. After a while, Tony goes to see Elvira, who knows that Tony is working with her husband no more. Tony tells her that he likes her and wants to marry her. Tony tells Elvira that with a woman like her beside him, he is going to be on top. Elvira, however, asks him what they are going to do about Frank, and Tony tells her that Frank is nothing and he is not going to be around for that long anyway. He then asks Elvira to think about what he has said. Tony goes to the bar and he sees Gina dancing there. He gets angry at the sight, and before he can say something to her, a detective gets there and Tony invites him to his office. His name is Mel Bernstein, a corrupt police detective on Frank's payroll who attempts to extort money from Tony in return for police protection. In the meantime, Frank and Elvira get there at the club. Tony goes and sits with Elvira. He asks her if she has thought about what he said, and Frank, on the other hand, tells him to go find a woman of his own, and Tony says he already has. He does not listen to Frank and goes on to tell him that he should not be giving orders to anyone, as orders are given by the people who have the balls. As Frank leaves with Elvira, Tony goes to Chi-Chi and expresses that Frank is the one who sold them out to the corrupt detective. Tony spots Gina fraternizing with a man and beats them both when he sees him trying to kiss her. Chi-Chi then drives her home, and on their way, he tells her that she is the only pure thing Tony has left and goes on to advise her to find a good man for herself. She then goes on to ask Chi-Chi to go out with her. She tells him that she has noticed how he looks at her. Chi-Chi, however, declines because she is Tony's little sister. Hitmen then attempt to assassinate Tony, who ends up getting wounded but manages to escape. Chi-Chi, on the other hand, is in bed with a blonde woman when he gets a call from Tony, who asks him to see him outside Lopez Motors. Tony then tells one of his men to call Frank and tell him that they screwed up and got away. Frank, on the other hand, is relaxing with a detective and one of his top guys. Tony and Chi-Chi appear and Frank pretends that he is shocked to see him wounded. Frank then receives that call, the one Tony instructed his men to make. Tony then fully confronts him. Frank tries to talk hither and thither, but ends up confessing that he is the one who sent those men to eliminate Tony. He then begs for his life as he offers him $10 million and Elvira for his life, but Tony does not feel merciful tonight and goes on to order Chi-Chi to shoot him. After they have killed Frank, they go on to eliminate the detective as well. Tony then goes on to offer a job to Frank's top guy and asks him to call him tomorrow. Tony soon marries Elvira and becomes the distributor of Sosa's product, using his profits to build a multi-million-dollar business empire and construct a large, heavily guarded estate. He now has everything. He opens a salon for his little sister as well. In 1983, a sting operation by federal agents results in Tony being charged with tax evasion with an inevitable prison sentence. Sosa offers to use his government connections to keep Tony out of prison, but Tony is asked to help him with one of the problems he has been facing. He tells Tony that he will help him only if Tony helps them assassinate an activist intending to expose Sosa's drug operations. He says that his men will finish the job, but they are going to need his help because they have a language barrier in the state. During dinner at an upscale restaurant, Tony accuses Chi-Chi of causing his arrest and Elvira of being an infertile junkie. Elvira ultimately leaves him. Tony travels to New York City to carry out the assassination with Sosa's henchman Alberto, nicknamed the Shadow, who plants a radio-controlled bomb under the activist's car. However, when the activist is unexpectedly accompanied by his wife and children, Tony tries to call off the hit. Shadow refuses to back down, and Tony ends up killing him before he can detonate the bomb. Tony returns to Miami, where an enraged Sosa calls him to promise retribution for allowing the activist to deliver the exposé. Tony, at his mother's behest, tracks down Gina and finds her with Chi-Chi. In a fit of rage, Tony shoots Chi-Chi, after which Gina tearfully tells Tony that they were married the day before. A distraught Tony returns to his estate with Gina. Moments later, Sosa's men begin to invade the estate and kill all of Tony's guards. As this happens, Gina accuses Tony of wanting her for himself and shoots at him. One of Sosa's men then kills her and is in turn killed by Tony. With assassins outside his office, Tony turns a grenade launcher-equipped rifle on them, mowing down Manny. Tony is repeatedly shot by the remaining attackers, but continues to taunt them until he is fatally shot from behind by Sosa's right-hand man, the Skull. Tony's corpse then falls into a fountain below, in front of a statue with the inscription, "The world is yours," a message Tony had seen earlier displayed on the side of an advertising blimp. This is where the story ends. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get new movie recaps.